So I'm here in London with Nick Hudson. Many of you will know Nick, of course, from PANDA and his deep insights from the very get-go at the start of what was going on with lockdowns and COVID and restrictions and PANDA. Welcome to London, Nick.
Thanks very much.
And we've, at the moment, got a digital bill of rights that we're doing. But before I get into that, I wanted to ask you just some reflections. We're told now that COVID has come out somewhere else and everything. A lot of people have seen how bad lockdowns were, the lies, the CDU, the Rapid Response Unit, spying, Twittergate, the lockdown files. What's your take on where things are now and how people are looking at things generally, trust levels and all of that? How do you see it now, a few years on?
There's definitely a sense of an accruing minority of people who are seeing through it all. I do worry that it's all a bit too late in some parts of the world. I get scared about a lot of the things I see in the UK, I'm afraid to say, and that makes me feel very sad. But, this is the way of centralization in general. Whatever the mechanism of control is, whatever the attempt at centralization is, it's doomed to fail. And the only question is what it takes down with it. So I'm very pleased to hear you fighting against digitized IDs and so on. It's exactly the kind of thing you ought to be fighting against. If Tony Blair's in favor of it, everybody should be against it. That's the bottom line. But I do have to sort of say that the need here is to really confront the bigger beast of centralization. The manifestations of it, yes, they're all worth fighting, but I think the awareness needs to increase in the broader public imagination of just how great a problem it is that so much of our lives is dominated by centralized institutions. The fact that governments in so many countries in the West are more than 50% of the economy, that's a number that's probably 5 times what it should be. And that's where your problems start and end, really. Nobody would be afraid of digitized ID if the state was 2% of the economy. You wouldn't have to be scared of its ability to circumscribe all of your rights using that one little document or one little artifact. The reason we worry about these technologies is because we've allowed the state to become too powerful.
And it's very interesting. And why do you think they saw? I know people like James Burnham talked about managerialism. We saw fascism. We saw Stalinism. We've talked about, we see war economies. People talked about military-industrial complex. What do you think it is? Do you think there's an inherent nature for people just with power to want to hold on to it and grow more, or what? And what's the antidote to that?
Yeah, that's a problem I've been thinking about for many years. Is what kind of mechanisms could you introduce into society? And this doesn't need to be laws or constitutions or anything like that. It's maybe cultural reminders would be good enough or something. But I come up with nothing too compelling, and I'm not exactly the only or the first person to ever have thought about that problem. But it does seem to be the case that empires grow, bureaucracies attendant upon them become larger, and then there's a collapse and the cycle kicks off again. That does seem to be a repeating story in history. It would be rather nice if you could slow down the accrual of the bureaucracy and therefore stave off the collapse. But I don't know of any philosophers who've come up with the answer to that problem.
I mean, people have talked about the civilizational question. That will mean different things to different people. But I think there's an air of optimism in Britain, in spite of all the things we've seen in the last few years, and also what's happened in America. Maybe not just this second, but that whole sense that now we've got Jay Bhattacharya and Bobby Kennedy Jr. and others in a kind of cabinet. Previously, people were saying they're wackos and they're crazy. This is all very different, and a kind of populism that's sort of more about public. Here too, we're seeing changes. We've seen things like new political party reform, 670 councillors, other people getting involved in things, a sense that things can change. Where do you see all of that in light of, on the one hand, the bureaucracy in the state? A lot of people said the blob's got to go. Some of them are saying that specifically, but also the role of the citizen or the subject or the public.
Difficult one. I'm not a resident here, so it's hard for me to have a sense of, or to claim to have a finger on the pulse. I can tell you what signs I would pick up on if I saw them. So, if I think back to 2019, I think the NIH in this country, what do they call it now? The National Health Agency or Health Security Agency or something
UKHSA, yeah.
UKHSA, yeah. I mean, I think in 2019, a lot of people would have sung the praises of national health. When I hear people actually saying we demand local healthcare and do away with NIH, then I'll sort of be convinced that there's a real traction and people have understood the problem of centralization and how pernicious it is. So that would be the kind of sign I'd be looking for. But I just don't spend enough time here to really have a sense that people have gotten anywhere close to that kind of level.
So, but people would say, so you're talking about the National Health Service, which is one of the biggest employers in the world, and we've got it's sclerotic, lots of managers, and also people at the front line don't have enough resource. But people say, what do you want? Do you want to get back to the Florence Nightingale, volunteers, local parish churches doing health? I mean, can you have the kind of insights and developments and responses if it is just local with those kind of resources, whatever people will get locally?
Yeah, I mean, the problem, the trap that all bureaucrats fall into is this sort of belief that somehow uniformity is a virtue. Even at the same time that we hear all this talk of how diversity is important, that's not something they'll admit with respect to systems. And in a complex world, I think the one thing you can say with certainty about complex systems is that they're very hard to manage, and multiple attempts at solving the problems presented by them certainly is the way to go. You want multiple units of scale, multiple levels of organization. So yes, to some places having the Florence Nightingale system, and yes, to some being managed at a provincial level or at for some basic level of services at some organizing level. But you want a diversity of attempts to solve problems. You want private sector attempts. You want sort of charitable attempts. I hesitate to attribute anything to the state as being a positive role right now, because we should all be fighting back the state of every resource that we have. It's a very stupid and bureaucratic way to think that there's got to be a one-size-fits-all solution certainly at the level of large scale, at the level of a nation with 100 million people in it. It's just a backwards way of thinking, really.
So, I suppose finally, really, we know a lot about global institutions. People talk about the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab recently resigned his position, but we're saying maybe it would be van der Leyen or someone. But we've also seen America come out of the World Health Organization. We've seen people be much more skeptical about those things. It seems that it's not just lockstep and it's not just agreements. To what extent are you optimistic, pessimistic? How much do you think we can shape all of this in this coming period?
I don't think there's any real democracy happening, and I don't think Donald Trump is a real legitimate manifestation of the will of the people. We saw recently how he awarded this enormous surveillance contract to Palantir. That was certainly not part of his election promise. And if people aren't seeing through that, then I don't know, then I can't help them. So I just don't look to anything manifesting from current political or democratic systems with any great level of hope or optimism. So I'm neither sort of surprised or definitely not pleasantly surprised by anything that's happened there. There's a second part to your question.
Well, I suppose the thing about Palantir, by the way, who also the people that not only did the tracking for lockdowns in the UK, but also doing NHS data, and the CIA set them up. I mean, Peter Thiel, I like Peter Thiel actually. I think he says a lot of very interesting things, but that digital wallet that the government are making for all those documents is the slow burn. On the one hand, they're proposing label together a brick card, but all of those areas we discussed, debanking, facial recognition, low traffic neighborhoods, 15-minute cities, cash, central bank digital currency, programmable, all of these things. And to your point, you're saying take it at the source more, challenge the question of centralization, say that we can have local things, but still, I guess, the ability to use technology that's come about through economies of scale. Or
technology is definitely not per se bad. As I said, I don't think we'd be worried about digital ID if the state was 2% of the economy, It's kind of, I can see utility in it. And it wouldn't be frightening necessarily. The problem is that there's a willingness demonstrated many times over now to debank people, or to gong them out of some or other transaction or participation in society on the basis of their views, or how much meat they ate this month, or how much carbon dioxide they supposedly emitted. That kind of thing is alive and well, and that's the problem, is that we have a state that's A, powerful enough, and B, willing to do so, and there doesn't appear to be a mechanism to unseat it, the state, not the political figurehead at the time.
Well, thanks for speaking to us today, Nick. It's really good to be with you. We're right across the street, across the river from Parliament, and we know that everyone from the levellers to the diggers have had a contribution in the Putney debates about freedom, democracy, individual subject citizens versus the state. We also know that William Tyndale was burnt at the stake for translating the Bible, and John Wilkes then forced the arguments of free speech and openness in Parliament. It's a constant battle, guys. We're not going to just wave a magic wand and win it, but we want you all to be involved and to tell your friends, colleagues and neighbours, get them involved. The Digital Bill of Rights, let's share it, let's put pressure on our MPs, but let's campaign and lobby and assert ourselves, because we're always better together. What you saw on the video here, make sure you click on here, because we need to carry on the work we're doing, and the way we do that is through our membership. We'd love you to join. Click on here, see what you can do, and be part of making things better for all of us together. Thank you.